Hey folks, Lenny Lawson here, the car guru. My daughter was just in my office. I had to ask her to remind me of a phrase that I've used many times. That happens a lot these days in my old age. But yeah, you remember the saying, a jack of all trades, but a master of none? You know, my question for America's youth today is that, are you a jack of all trades? And when I'm talking about trades, there's certain fundamental things I think that every young person needs to be at least acquainted with, familiar with, and they need to respect certain attributes that we all need to have. Now, my parents imbued into me certain things. I didn't even realize they were doing it. I mean, it was the example of how they lived and how they conducted themselves, just in society, how they interacted with people that they knew and loved, and how they interacted with people that were total strangers. You didn't see a lot of difference with them. And I learned my respect for other human beings and interaction with other human beings from my parents without even realizing it. So in today's show, we're going to talk about stuff like that. I know that this is a show about cars, but what I want to do is I want to prepare young people and to equip old people who still have young people in the household to focus on certain key attributes that are important when they go out into the real world. I mean, you understand how concerned I am because you're probably concerned about our youth and about their influences, about where they get information. The different sources of information that are available now weren't available to us. We had 3 channels in my house when I was growing up. Well, there was public broadcasting. Yeah, and you probably, if you're over, 50? Yeah, probably. You understand the 3 channel. Well, no, it's been longer than that. Probably if you're over 60, you know what the 3 channel thing is like. ABC, NBC, and CBS. That was it. And we didn't live there, did we? We watched it at 6:30. Maybe watched the local news, read the paper. The inputs for our generation weren't as obvious and in our faces all the time or in our back pockets or something that we kind of lived in. We didn't talk about screen time. Screen time wasn't an issue. So much of the information that they get is playful, it's cultural, it's not helpful. It doesn't do anything to improve their lives, and so they think that that's all they need to hear. And so they come to their jobs, they work. I've got them working for me. People who have that phone on their hip, and some of them put the earbuds in their ears, and I don't know why I allow it, but at this point, I still do. The mechanics, they're I don't know what they're listening to. As long as they turn the hours and do good quality work, I'm not going to complain, but it is a distraction. And we've had an issue with some of our young salespeople that come to work. They end up not lasting long. We've got a good crew right now, and for the most part, these guys, they're young. I mean, I'd say age 22 to early 30s. And, there's one that's a geezer like me. But for the most part, these guys work pretty hard, and they're doing videos, they're connecting with their owner base, and they're connecting with prospects, and they're doing videos to try to get people into the sales funnel. People that are out there floating around maybe thinking they're in the market for the car. They're trying to capture them. And that's why these guys are successful. And they use social media in a positive way. Now, at night, are they still continuing to play around in those areas like TikTok and so forth, or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, where it's really not adding any value to them, and they're not really learning anything? I mean, they're talking about late night TV going away. What about network news? Is it going to go away when this generation moves on? Who knows? But there are certain things that I wanted to talk about today that I think are critically important. The first one I'm going to touch on is financial, and I'll get back to that here in just a minute. Okay, so your youngster is getting ready to leave the house. Now, you've probably never messed around with a budget that much. Maybe you kept it in your head. Maybe you did. Maybe you had spreadsheets and really watched expenses, and you've been diligent in contributing to a 401k. You have a savings account. You have investments. You're looking at that. That is a priority in your life. Is that really you? Do you think that's the people, maybe your kids, your adult children, are they living that way, or are they living paycheck to paycheck? And the reason they're living paycheck to paycheck is because they can't control their spending. It could be because they just don't have a job that pays that much. But, most of the jobs that I'm seeing are $18 to $25 an hour now. Should be able to do pretty good at that. Should be able to put some money away. But from what I see, it's just more of an opportunity to spend. So if you never lived under a budget, then you probably never included your kids in any of that planning process and helped them develop a budget, help them to understand what a bank balance is and why it's important to have savings and what percent of your income your net income should you save? Should you put back for a rainy day? What is a rainy day? Is that when something real tragic happens, like the lady that I'm talking to right now that has an old, let's see, what year is that car? 2015 Nissan. It's got 187,000 miles on it. Not good maintenance history. Lots of time between oil changes, like anywhere from 12 to 15,000 miles between oil changes. The engine's out of the vehicle. Her payoff on that vehicle is probably, as it sits right now, probably 5 times what the vehicle is worth. It's salvage right now. I mean, you could put an engine in it, but the cost of the engine with the mileage that she has on it, if she puts a new engine in it, it's more than the value of the car. But because her payoff is so high, what choice does she have? Plus, she has no money. She cannot afford to put a new engine in. So what she do? She calls me. What do I do? So, I can fix certain things, and I can help her minimize the cost. I don't know whether she's wanting me to help her pay for it just as a donation or something. We have plenty of charities and civic responsibilities, things that we do, things that we sponsor. And occasionally I have paid for something for somebody that was desperate. But, I don't know about you, but I just don't like to reward irresponsibility. If something fails, like an engine, because you didn't maintain it, I'm not sure I want to help with that. How do you feel about that? Is that mean? Well, that's how my parents raised me, and that's how I'm raising my kids, or raised my kids, to bear responsibility for your actions. Now, in this particular scenario, I don't know that she's been irresponsible with her life. It's not for me to judge. But I see a lot of this. I see people that get into situations, and it's not of their own making, but they've got nothing to fall back on. So that's where the rainy day fund comes in. And I don't think kids understand it. It's get the money, spend it. Get the money, spend it. And, pay your bills and, play Sony PlayStation all evening. It's not anything about development. Now, I'm not saying all young people are that way, because they're not. There's a lot of responsible young people, and I've got them. Thank goodness I've got a lot of them working for me. But when their life goes off the tracks a little bit, they'll come and have a sit-down conference with me, and we'll work through it, and we'll talk about mistakes that they've made and then things that they can do to get back on the right track. I was talking to one of my daughters this weekend about she's having some issues with behavior with her kids, and we talked about the difference between a rut and a grave. You can get out of a rut, and so some of these behaviors have cut pretty deep grooves. I always think of an album, like the old record albums, LPs that we used to play. If you played it for a long time, then over time, if you didn't keep a clean needle and keep the dirt out of the grooves, then it would start sounding all scratchy and you would lose your sound quality. But life's kind of like that too. We can get stuck in a rut, and pretty soon things just aren't working anymore. But with kids, it takes a while to get out of that groove. You get halfway up the slope and you're almost there, and then you tumble right back in. So I like to talk to these young people. I say, what kind of groove are you in? What kind of rut are you in as far as your lifestyle is concerned? I mean, it's everything from marriage falling apart to, being overweight, being unhealthy, having financial troubles. I mean, I've heard it all. I've been through, I don't know how many divorces and never had one myself. But the one thing that's consistent about most of the issues, and I think you'll agree with this, is most of the wounds are self-inflicted. And it's behavior over a long period of time. I think kids are getting exposed to a lot of stuff in school, which is good. I've done a lot of interaction and do a lot of talks at high schools. I don't really, it's harder for me to relate to middle school people. They wanted me to do a career day for 8th graders. Come on. When I was in the 8th grade, I remember I had a civics class, and they wanted us to pick our 3 careers that we were pretty sure that we were going to do. Well, mine was a mechanical engineer, an architect, or a forest ranger. None of those worked out for me. I didn't know I was going to be a car dealer. I mean, we lived in West Virginia. My dad worked for Chevrolet Motor Division. He wanted to be a car dealer, so he turned in his resignation. They helped him find multiple car dealerships. We settled on one in Greenville, Tennessee, moved here. And I started high school at 14, 10th grade at 14. And my brother, I knew he wanted to be a doctor. He wanted to follow in the footsteps of our grandfather, but I didn't know what I was going to do, but I felt like the car business was good. It looked fun, get to drive all these new cars. And, little did I know what all was going to be involved. But I found out after I graduated from college, I went to a school up in Detroit, Michigan called the Chevrolet School of Merchandising and Management. It was run by Chevrolet. Well, it was run by General Motors, and each division had their own branch of it. But what they did is you stayed up there. You lived in Detroit for 6 weeks, and I learned more in 6 weeks than I learned in 4 years in college. But it was specific knowledge about becoming a car dealer. And I love it when young people are able to take advantage of those kind of educational opportunities where they learn something that is specific and directed to what they're going to be doing. And this generalized stuff is what gets people in trouble. We're seeing a lot more young people that are high school graduates that are not going to college, but they're graduating high school and they were in a college path. They should have gone a technical path. But too often the technical path is frowned upon, and I mean, we looked down on that when I was in high school. I was going to college, I wasn't going to go learn how to work on cars or wire a house. But those are the jobs of the future. All of those technical skills that these kids don't want to do, or so many of them, they go to college and they end up getting a 4-year degree and end up waiting tables at Applebee's. And they're off to a terrible start. Financially, they don't know how to manage their money. They don't know anything about credit. And, I talk about credit. I'm not talking about credit to 8th graders, but I talk about it to 11th graders and 12th graders. And, the funny thing is that they have watched their parents. They know that their parents have bad credit. Not all of them, but a lot of them do, because they've watched, they've answered the calls from the collection agencies. They've seen overheard their parents fussing about not being able to make the car payment or whatever, the mortgage payment. And so what we don't want to do is repeat those mistakes. So I'm a big advocate of businessmen and businesswomen going into schools and talking some sense into these people that there are 11th graders and 12th graders before they get out of school, so that they understand what their financial responsibilities are and what creating a strong financial path looks like, so that they don't get into some kind of a rut that they languish in until they're in their mid-30s. And by that point, they're disgusted and frustrated, and they've had 4 or 5 different jobs, and they're looking for another new start. And you may be saying, well, Lenny, what makes you an expert? Well, I'm not an expert, but I see it. I experience it. I've been doing this for 47 years now. I've interviewed a lot of people and not hired, very many because of just the lack of qualifications. How somebody interacts with you. Another thing I wanted to talk about is just the lack of communication skills that kids have. A lot of them. They don't, as far as communicating, they aren't able to connect with me. You know what I'm saying? They don't look me in the eye. Their eyes are darting back and forth. You ask them what their goals are in the future. They hadn't thought about it. I never really thought about that. Where do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want to be doing? What would be the perfect job for you? I don't know, something I can make a lot of money doing. It's just there's no real focus on a career, something that they enjoy doing. I've heard many times that if you take on a job that you love and you enjoy it, you'll never work a day in your life. I'm 68 years old. I could retire right now. I could go to the house, sell the dealership, and be fine for the rest of my life. But I enjoy having a place to go to, young people to be able to nurture and grow and be a mentor for them, and just having a challenge. I just can't imagine waking up and, what yard sale am I going to today? Let's see, I mowed the yard, I cleaned out the garage. I got to go clean out the attic now. No, thank you. That's not a daily plan for me. You ought to see my calendar today. I showed it to my daughter. She said, Dad, you shouldn't have that much to do. I said, I know if all of you would do your jobs, I wouldn't have this much to do. I was just kidding, though. But I say all that to say this. I had a tour that I had worked out with the technical school here. And they were going to bring a bunch of, let's see, what were they? I think they were sophomores in high school. And there were about 15 of them. Bus shows up. And I'm sitting here in the showroom and said, okay, Lord, please let me say the right things to inspire these young people to be better, to work harder, to understand what's laying out in front of them. And so, I gathered them together in the waiting room over on the Nissan showroom, and we talked for a little while. And I talked about personal responsibility. And I did it in a way, I like telling stories. And so I use examples of stories and people that I've known, and also some fictitious characters. And you can just see a light switch turn on. And I knew I had them. I had their attention. And then we started going through the dealership, and they saw, I keep a lot of vintage cars, antique cars and stuff like that, and they think they're so cool. And we just, cars in general are a big turn on for people of that age. And then we went into the shop, and I talked about how hard it is to be a technician, what kind of skill sets you have to have, what kind of money they make. We broke down what it takes to live comfortably and what you can make in certain types of jobs. And I just got so many good comments, and had a bunch of them ask me if they could visit with me later on one-on-one. And I said, sure, here's my cell phone number. Really? You'll give us your number? Yeah, this is my cell phone number. And let's get together and talk. I'll be glad to strategize with you and give you some ideas and talk a little bit further on a private basis. And after it was over, their teacher, or whoever their host was, came up to me and said, I really appreciate you doing that. That's stuff that they really needed to hear. And that's what I really needed to hear. You want feedback from the people that are closest to the source. And, they said that he asked if they could bring another group. And I said, sure, just let me know anytime. I'm available. What I find, though, when I make those offers to schools, especially the county schools, that there's so many demands on them, they just don't think about it. It's just out of sight, out of mind. And I found that the best way to be able to go to schools and interact with them is not wait for the invitation to come, is to make the offer. Go to the top, go to the principal, go to the superintendent if you have to. Say, I'm willing to do this. This is the content that I can bring. I think I can make a difference. I can help people. But the way I look at it is I just help one. If I just take one kid and light a fire in his mind, then I've succeeded. Okay, I'll take my last break. I'll be back in just 1 minute. I was in a waiting room the other day. It was at my physical rehab facility where I'm getting rehabilitation on my new hip. And I was just listening to these two ladies talk. And both of them are grandparents. And both of them are raising their grandchildren. Now, I didn't get into the details, but they were talking about all the school things they had to take them to and all the extracurricular activities and how hard it is on an old body, to keep up with these young people. And some of the situations are due to drugs. Some of them are, other life circumstances. Maybe somebody dies, a child dies or something like that. That can happen. That happened to me. As far as the majority of cases, I think the reasons that the grandparents are raising the grandkids is because the parents made bad choices. They did not have people in their lives, whether it be somebody at school or whatever, to inspire them and to give them hope and to challenge them to be better. And in so many other areas, of their life, that if they just had some guidance and some mentorship, then they could have been more successful and they'd be raising their own kids. The grandparents could be grandparents. That's what we're supposed to do, right? And we're supposed to spoil them rotten and then hand them back. We go to ball games, we watch them, but we don't have to deal with the fussing afterwards. 70-year-old grandmother shouldn't be raising teenagers. I think banning cell phone use in schools is a big choice. I couldn't believe when my grandson said that they're allowed to have cell phones in the classroom where he goes to school up in northern Kentucky. They banned them in the schools here in Greenville, and I think that's a great idea. We have to break that mind lock that the devices have on our youth, but also on many of their parents. Maybe you abuse it as well. I do at times. And my wife reminds me, look at your screen time. I think you're spending too much time on your phone. Of course, I always have an excuse. I'm working. I'm preparing a new podcast. But really, I was watching a bring a trailer auction to see what Ford Bronco was going to bring. So I don't apologize for taking up this time and not talk about cars. But occasionally, this is what I do. So wake up if you need to wake up. Don't let the cell phone rule your family life. If you're going out to dinner, all four of you, 2 parents and 2 kids, and the first thing you do is everybody sits down and gets their phone out, there's a problem. If you text all the time instead of talk, there's a problem. Starting early in high school, if your kids aren't having to manage their own money and pay their own bills to a certain degree, there's a problem. And if your kid can't even look a waiter in the eye when he's taking his order, there's a problem. And it's not the kid. So, if you need me, call me, 423-552-2020, anything automotive or otherwise. Or you can send me a text to Lenny Lawson, 2020@gmail.com. And don't forget, the Car Guru Guidebook is available, and I can email it to you. Just send me an email to lennylawson2020@gmail.com, or you can text me, like I said, and I will send you a PDF of the Car Guru Guidebook, which will save you thousands upon thousands of dollars over your life when it comes to buying, selling, trading, servicing cars. It's that easy. Well, I'll see you next time.